Hey folks, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're here to talk all about Vinland Saga episode 23, Miscalculation. But before we get into that though, I do want to give a big thank you to those of you who shared last week's video over on Twitter, at FoxTun2X, at Andrea Lorenzi96, at Faye0011, at Nacho Gashardo, and at #Nauto. Thanks so much for sharing last week's video, everybody, and if you too would like to have your name shouted out in next week's Vinland Saga video, then be sure to share this video around on the internet, and then tag me at JoJo Talks Too Much over on Twitter, and I will be sure to shout your name out in next week's Vinland Saga finale. Set off the alarms. Yes, indeed, it's the finale next week, and I will be sure to shout your names out in next week's finale. But enough about that, let's actually dig into this week's penultimate episode of Vinland Saga. What I have to assume, by the way, is Season 1. While no, there has not been an official announcement for a Season 2, I think it would be insanely ridiculous for there not to be a Season 2 of this show. It is arguably an Anime of the Year contender. It is stupidly good, and anybody not watching it is doing themselves a disservice. It deserves to be more popular than it is, but I mostly blame the distribution of that than anything else. But getting into the actual episode this week, it is very much a tale of two stories, right? It's two stories running parallel that couldn't be more opposite. And it's the story of Aslad, and it's the story of Thorfinn. And how their two stories are mirrors of each other while at the same time being very different. I say mirrors in the sense that they are very much stories about two people who are alone, but the circumstances are different, and it does feel like both stories, again in the mirroring sense, it feels as though both are reaching a sort of crescendo, like we're reaching the end of this particular chapter in these characters' lives, and the way it's handled has me both excited in some cases, and especially for one story, and very nervous in other cases, and especially for another story. Aslad's story is all about whispers at the banquet, while Thorfinn's is all about being locked up and they won't let him out. And it's funny how these two stories, again, mirror each other in a lot of ways, but are so painfully different in others. And I think it's one of the things about the show that I haven't given enough credit to, and that's to Yukimura's ability to layer themes and symbolism into his series. And I do think that Wit is aware of this, and they managed to put into certain scenes tons of symbolism so that you kind of get the basic idea of what Yukimura was trying to say with the manga, and now what Wit is trying to say with the anime. And I think in terms of the thematic resonance of the episode, big words today, the themes of this week's episode they ring so true. And I really do feel like, for as much as we love the bombastic nature of Vinland Saga, the big action scenes, the crazy lines, like the goofy lines of dialogue, the awesome one-liners, the big moments, it's also these little moments and these episodes where there's game playing and even just two characters just talking to each other that really makes me realize what a treat Vinland Saga is and how rarely we get shows like this. And it's one of just a handful of shows this year that really managed to move me in certain moments, and even have its quieter episodes managed to instill a lot of different emotions in me all at once. In this video, I'm gonna dissect the episode into two halves. I'm gonna talk about the Aslad stuff first and the Thorfinn stuff second, for no other reason than Aslad's name start with A, and I'm feeling like just being alphabetical today, I suppose. The reason why I said that the two mirror each other is because Aslad is very much, he's alone, but in a room full of people. And he has, in this room full of people, he has nobody that he can truly call friend. Not anymore. Still feeling the emotions. At least they didn't have to show me my boy's body or something. Bjorn is officially out of the show, which breaks my heart, but it is what it is. But because of what happened with Bjorn, Aslad finds himself in this banquet hall, and he's surrounded by allies, technically, yeah. He's also surrounded by plenty of enemies, but nobody that he can truly look to as a friend who really has his best interests at heart, who really cares about him. Nobody in that room truly does. Thorkel might see him as kind of a buddy, but that's about as far as it goes. Not really like, and not even like a buddy-buddy, more of just, you're the guy that I drink and talk with. I'm not like the biggest fan of you. Like, I did try to kill you not that long ago. And Connacht obviously has, like, he likes having Askeladd around, clearly, because he's a good advisor, but he did kill Ragnar, so of course he doesn't care either. The king sure as shit doesn't care, and Loki cares even less. Or Floki cares even less, rather. And it's sad to see Askeladd in this sort of predicament, especially when it's paired with what's going on with Thorfinn, whereas Thorfinn is in a jail alone. He actually does have somebody who cares about him in that town, who eventually does show up, and we'll get more into that more once we start talking about Thorfinn. But it's just the idea that the two stories mimic each other in a lot of ways, where Thorfinn's alone and Askeladd is alone. The circumstances are different. And I just think that's really impressive. And the fact that even when he's alone, Thorfinn still has at least one person who cares about him who is willing to show up, whereas Askeladd has nobody left. It just breaks my heart, is what I'm trying to say. And I hated seeing my boy Askeladd on the back pedal. Like, seeing him on the back foot is just bizarre. I'm so used to him being the master manipulator, and it's rare that we see these moments from him where he genuinely panics. And the reason why he panics is because the king is, for lack of a better word, a king. He knows his shit. He's on top of his game, and he can play the Game of Thrones, as it were. And I don't mean, like, the book. I mean, well, kind of. But I mainly mean just the idea of when you play the Game of Thrones, you either win or you die. When you play these sorts of politics, it's very simple for you to die. And the king is very clearly old and has been at it for a little bit longer than Askeladd has, at least just judging off appearances. And I don't know if he necessarily said Wales specifically to get to Askeladd, but it's that one moment, that one miscalculation on Askeladd's part of showing emotion. The one time we see genuine emotion on Askeladd's face that is not smug confidence, and it's genuine panic at the mention of Wales. So he has now tipped his card. And he didn't mean to. It was an accident. It was a miscalculation. Not meant to happen, but it still happened. And unfortunately, Floki did in fact catch this. Now, I don't necessarily know how that will play into next week's episode, or what I would assume to be sometime into next season. I can see there being some sort of confrontation between Floki and Askeladd, either at the end of next episode or into next season, of him being like, hey, I know your game, and then Askeladd being like, I don't know what you're talking about, like that kind of thing, and then like realize that, like, okay, now I have to kill Floki without anybody noticing that it was me, and it's gonna be even more game playing, because that's just the nature of the beast, especially when it comes to Askeladd. A lot of his arc has been a lot of game playing, a lot of manipulating, and that's all to try to get Connacht to become Artorias, to become the prince that was promised, to seek out and make himself a hero that can save everybody. And I find it interesting that this game playing character manages to break, because the king mentions that they need to attack Wales, which is his home. And it's that idea of home, again, these beautiful mirrors of each other's story, Askeladd and Thorfinn mirroring each other yet again with the mention of home, because it's home that breaks the two of them. It's home that breaks Askeladd, it's home that breaks Thorfinn. And mentioning home for Askeladd is what ultimately shakes his cold exterior. And we know that I really don't think that Thorkel is gonna say anything. Like, when he told Thorkel, like, hey, don't say anything that's between you and me, Thorkel's like, yeah, I know. I really believe Thorkel. Like, I don't think he's gonna say anything. But the fact that he told Thorkel is interesting to me. I thought he would have just lied, but it does tell me that maybe he is kind of looking for somebody he can rely on. I don't know. And what really concerns me, really concerns me, is the fact that they straight up call him. They're like, Askeladd, son of Olaf, the king would like to see you. Step forward. And he steps forward, and Askeladd, the word for word, says, why is luck never on my side at the 11th hour? What the fuck is that supposed to mean? I'm concerned, is what I'm trying to say. We know that Floki told the king, like, hey, he got freaked out when you mentioned whales. So just so you know, like, keep an eye on that. That's something to keep an eye on. So is the king gonna, like, test him? Is the king gonna, like, try to trick him and test him into, like, trying to get Ashlad into a position where he can have him killed, you know, like trying to say like, oh, he's a spy for whales or something like that? Is that the plan? Because if it is, I'm gonna freak the fuck out. But as I was saying earlier, it's not just Ashlad that we have to really worry about, and it's not just Ashlad who is thinking about home right now. It is also Thorfinn, and here's where we transition into Thorfinn's half of the episode. Now, like I said before, it's very much a tale of two stories. It's Ashlad and Thorfinn's tale is, oddly enough, it starts in solitude and ends on this hopeful note. And it's the idea that, like, when we see him at the beginning of the episode, he is so just not himself. He's not screamy, he's not punchy, he's not angry, he's not this ball of hatred that we've come to know. He's essentially just on autopilot. He's kind of like Rock Lee at the end of the Gaara fight. He's just like running on instinct, essentially. And he's just sort of like, he thinks that he hears Ashlad call him like a dumb kid. So he chases after him and it just turns out to be some guy. And he doesn't fight back until they actually try to hit him, in which case, again, just running off pure instinct, he knocks these three dudes out. Doesn't kill them or anything, just knocks them out. And is just sat there looking at the town's guard. I can't remember who this guy is. Like whoever he was, the blonde dude who we've seen before, sees him and he's like, "You again!" And he like throws him into the barracks, throws him into a cell. Says like, "Nah, if he was actually the prince's guard, then he wouldn't be here while the prince is at that banquet. So there's like, even if he is the prince's guard, it's gonna be a while before the prince even shows up. So who cares? He's definitely not the prince's guard, at least from what I'm seeing. Meanwhile, we know that he is." But he tosses Thorfinn into the cell, and that's that. And it's funny because, again, this really shows just how low Thorfinn has sunk to even let those dudes he lets them push him down into the dirt, and he almost lets them beat him up. Like, he does fight back and he stops them from doing so, but he almost let them beat him up. And he's just so broken and tired, and he just doesn't want to, I don't know, he just doesn't want to, he doesn't want to keep going. And honestly, I don't blame him. After what happened last week between him and Ashlad, where Ashlad just finally just dressed him down and said, like, "Listen, kid, like, everything you've done is stupid. You are the dumbest person I've met." Like, he just, like, lets him have it and says, like, "You're doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That is textbook insanity, my dude." Somebody even mentioned that in the comments. Like, he's textbook insane. Like, he's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. He's crazy. And honestly, yeah, like, when Ashlad called him stupid, I can't help but agree. I do think Thorfinn was being dumb. And we've all been saying that Thorfinn's being dumb and that he should just go home. So, of course, as I'm thinking, like, it's over, Thorfinn. It's done. You're in jail now. Once you get out of here, just go home. Just go home. And of course, as I'm thinking, just go home, who should happen to saunter on into the prison to visit Thorfinn? Yes, indeed, it's Leif, who had overheard that a boy matching his description had been tossed into jail, and so he just wanted to go in and make sure that it wasn't Thorfinn, and of course it was. And he basically just sits down and has the best scene in the episode, as far as I'm concerned, and it goes to demonstrate Ueda's and Wit's caliber to convey insane emotion. Yuji Ueda is the seiyuu for Leif, and he is so good in this scene, in the scene between him and Thorfinn, especially at the beginning of it, where he has like his hands up against the cage and he's just trying to get through to him. The emotion in his voice, you can hear, like, you can, just by listening to this man speak, you can almost feel the weight of 11 years of searching for Thorfinn. It is so well handled. The quiver in his voice, the confidence, like the shift between like pain and anguish to this surge of confidence and reassurance, it's insanely well done. And Ueda's just a master of his craft, as far as I'm concerned. And he's done other stuff before. He's Leskinen in Steins Gate Zero. He's Speedwagon, of all people. He's done great stuff. And he's a very, very busy dude. Been in a lot of different roles. But I gotta say, this might be my favorite role of his. I genuinely think the emotion that he brought to the table in this scene, it got me emotional for a scene that really didn't require me to start getting all misty-eyed, but it really did. Because he just brings this energy to Leif, this human, like this caring nature to Leif that is so different to the other characters that we have in the show currently. And he just nails that scene. It's expertly handled. But you also can't dismiss Wit's involvement in that scene as well, because whoever worked on this scene, and again, if anybody in the comments manages to track down who animated this scene, it happened last time. We managed to figure out which animator it was. So if you guys happen to know which animator worked on this scene between Leif and Thorfinn, very simple scene, but the little twitches in the eyes, the movement of the mouth, the way Leif's face is animated. It's so painfully honest, and you can read this man's emotions in these little twitches. And I need to know who animated that, because I thought it was brilliantly done. And just the direction in that scene as well. Shuhei Yubata, absolute genius. Again, the man's previous work was Inuyashiki, another show that got me all emotional over an older dude, and it's just supremely well handled. And that man deserves to direct way more stuff after Vinland Saga. And of course, shoutouts to the chief animation director as well, Takehiko Aburu, who would have had to have approved this scene, so he also had a hand in it. And it's just, the emotion that Wit brings here is so, it's just so good, you guys. Like, it's powerful stuff. And again, just through these little twitches of the face, just through this one voice actor, it's so expertly handled. And that's not even going into the art direction in the background with Leif being bathed in this bright light coming from the outside the prison, while Thorfinn is stuck in the darkness of the jail cell. And it's this perfect representation of everything that Thorfinn has been going through. And it's a perfect representation of where his heart is at right now, where he feels like a prisoner in a jail of his own making. And finally there's somebody there, this light in his life again, Leif, who's extending his hand saying, "Come with me. Like, leave this dark prison that you've made for yourself." It's so good. The art director Yusuke Takeda. They also worked on stuff like the new Thesis, SAO 1 and 2. They're really prolific. Unfortunately, I'm just not too familiar with a lot of the stuff they've done. But the art direction in that scene, the background art there, the way the light plays off of the different characters, it's just this scene. This scene might be one of my favorite scenes, not just of the show, but of the season, possibly the year. It's so expertly crafted. I can't stress enough how well Wit does. Not only does the show manage to have these bombastic, crazy, like insane action scenes, but this is the heart of Wit, right? Is that they can bring that same level of intensity, not just to these action scenes, to anything that they're working on. When Wit is really, when the animators over at Wit really have their hearts in it, they can deliver some of the coolest scenes with the most minimalistic of approaches. And I cannot stress enough how much I loved that scene between Leif and Thorfinn, and it's easily my favorite part of the episode. And this is high up there in my list of favorite Vinland Saga episodes. There's certainly some stuff that I would have changed. There's a lot of reused scenes in this episode, like the one kid who's like staring at Thorfinn at one point. There's a couple reused scenes later on in the episode as well. But honestly, as a whole, I can't really blame them for reusing certain scenes, because A, they already looked good, so don't fix what ain't broke. And honestly, the direction, the writing, everything about this episode, and I guess that's more to Yukimura for writing the manga in the first place, but everything about this episode is just so peak Vinland Saga to me that I just adored basically every second. Is it perfect? No, and I kind of hate that it's not, because it's so close to perfection. But is it a damn good episode? You bet your ass it is. So that's basically going to wrap up my thoughts on this week's episode of Vinland Saga, the penultimate episode of Vinland Saga. And if you didn't know, I'm being a lot more strict with my ratings. So if there is even the slightest, nitpickiest little thing, then unfortunately I cannot give it the perfect S tier rank. So I'm going to have to give this week's episode the strongest A tier I can possibly give. After all my gushing, it hurts to give it an A tier. But yeah, there is some nitpicky stuff with the episode, but overall, it is phenomenally done. And I am gonna miss this show. I'm so nervous for next week, but I'm also kind of excited. And that's gonna do it for today's video, everybody. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Before we go, as always, I have to give a big shout out to the good folks over on Patreon, namely those in the Earl Grey tier. Calvin Atkinson, Crowbar of Irony, Ionos, Urza, Ginkotaku, Godzilla Fan, No For Nothing, Maria Teresa, Mirth Mouser, Cell, Shadow Creative, Sipco Games, Somastan, Steven, Sukochi, Tristan, and Verdun. Thank you all so much for your continued support over on Patreon. It is so appreciated. And if you too would like to join the T Squadron, then be sure to check out the first link in the description to check out our Patreon page, see all the cool rewards you can get over there, as well as access to our Patreon exclusive Discord. But with all that said, everybody, I am going to take off. I hope you guys enjoyed. And if you are feeling stressed out today, then you go have yourself a warm cup of tea. And I will talk to you all again real soon.